Hello and welcome to the Leafs Room podcast. My name is Jori. I'm joined by Stuart and Ethan, and we're here to give you a post-game of today's 5-4 OT thriller, Leafs over the Habs, in what was an exciting game. We're coming to you live from the Leafs Room at an undisclosed location.
Thriller was. What'd you think, guys?
Yeah, that was an insane game.
Didn't look good. Didn't look good there. Midway through the second period, we were looking at each other and wondering whether this team, with all the additions and all the changes, we're going to be heading in the right direction. But, typical Leaf fans that we are, we were ready to maybe, jump ship quickly. But I think actually we held on to our spots on the ship, and I think we were rewarded. What did you think of the effort, Ethan? What did you think tonight?
That was a crazy game, to say the least. Frederik Andersen did not impress me until overtime, which he did perform, but I still think he could have had some improvement.
Well, he made some really great saves in OT, and we should get to that. Who you thought was really good, who you thought was the best player, and who didn't really impress you. You mentioned Frederik Andersen as a guy that didn't impress you. Who did you think had a really great game?
I thought Kerfoot had a really good game. Kerfoot really, he was fast, he got to a lot of pucks, he was dangerous on the PK, and he was just zooming around, and he looked like a really good player.
Yeah, I've often said to you guys, and I remember when we picked him up in the trade, I was all excited about Tyson Barrie, our long-forgotten Tyson Barrie, but Kerfoot definitely was the guy that excited Jori after that trade. And Kerfoot, to me, and I mentioned that to you guys tonight, he seems to do all the little things right. He's good in the face-offs, especially D-zone. He seems to, cover guys well, get to pucks. He's very tenacious on the puck, and I just think he sets a good example for some of the other players on, how the game needs to be played. A little more complete player than some of the other guys.
Well, the best player tonight, in my opinion, was Nylander, and this isn't some kind of hot take. I mean, put up 3 or 4 points tonight.
He has a little bit of a bias, though, doesn't he?
Yeah, I say that as I wear my William Nylander jersey. Yeah. But he obviously had an outstanding game, on pace for 130 some odd. What is it? I don't know. Anyways, 112 goals. He was really great tonight.
Get the calculator out.
Of course, he was buzzing. I mean, unlike for the first period, there was kind of on and off, and he wasn't amazing. The line wasn't amazing. The first goal. For
it was Habs. Questionable with VC on that line. We were all kind of scratching.
I'm glad that he got something done. He scored.
Yeah,
and Nylander did the heavy lifting there. That's another thing that he does is he gets to those high danger areas, which is talked about over and over at length, and he drove that line in a lot of ways, which is something that the Leafs are going to need from him in a lot of ways this season.
The interesting thing about Nylander, and he has shown really well in the couple of games that we've seen. But the thing that I've noticed that really I haven't noticed so much about him in the past as I'm noticing now. I mean, before it was all about his possession game, his zone entries, his speed, his edges, his skating. Now his shot is unbelievable. If you think about the goals, the last 4 goals that we've seen, really they've all been on great, really hard, accurate shots that the goalies couldn't get to. So
yeah, Nylander really performed well, and on the power play especially, which should have been stacked, in my opinion. He really performed well.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a little bit, because they started, obviously, they had that first power play that they split them, and I believe the second power play also was split, and then they picked up the 5-on-3, and that's when Keefe turned to the super unit that we saw last year that was 5th best in the league.
Yeah.
We've been kind of screaming about it, at least I have, that top unit should be stacked, and they should be giving them a lot of ice time.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what the thinking was originally. You can see Keefe tonight, in general, is not necessarily, they announce the lines.
He's playing around with the lines.
He is. They announced everything there the other day, and people were kind of scratching their heads. But he even said that things might not necessarily stay the same. And, unlike Babcock, who stuck with guys well beyond when he should have been sticking with them, you see Keefe is very flexible and adaptable, and I also am glad that he decided that splitting the power play up and spreading the wealth wasn't necessarily working, and to stack it. Now, will he go back to stacking it next game? Who knows? But you can clearly see that the they can't get the puck, they can't get the puck off
Towards
the
the
Leafs.
net.
Well, no, they can't get the puck off the Leafs when the Leafs have that stacked power play. The possession time, they can't get the puck out of the zone, it seems like.
Yeah.
The Leafs are too dangerous. When they
Yeah,
have those guys on
well,
the ice.
that's the thinking. And if you look at another team, the Oilers, they stack the top unit with McDavid and Draisaitl. They played 80% of the minutes for them, I remember seeing, and obviously they had this lethal power play. There's not a lot of reason to be putting a guy like Jason Spezza or even Joe Thornton out there for more than half of the power play. And let's actually talk about Joe Thornton a
Well,
little
you can
bit.
play just
Yeah.
before we go to Joe Thornton. I just want to play a little bit of devil's advocate and say, if you stack that first power play, what have you got left on the second power play? You've got like a Zach Hyman. You've got maybe a Thornton. You've got
Mikheyev.
Spezza.
Yeah, you don't have a lot, and I kind of understand the thinking, but I don't know. I just feel like you're going to accomplish a lot more stacking it, but those guys do run out of gas after a minute and a bit, and I think by really weakening significantly the second power play unit, you might not have much going on with that unit. That's the only problem.
I think that the first unit should obviously be stacked. And the second unit could have some depth, but I believe that they're not putting those, not to say elite, but those really good players. Like, you don't really see Mikheyev on the power play. You don't really see those, Barabanov didn't really show anything, but he has a really high ceiling, as you can see. And I feel like guys like those gritty but really skilled players would work really well on the second unit.
Well, that's a good point. There is some depth there.
Yeah, and there's a lot of new
Little bit.
faces. A lot of new faces that we obviously saw, and those would be the guys you'd put on the second unit. Touched on him briefly. We'll get to him. Joe Thornton. Any of the new guys? Anyone kind of stand out to you?
Well, I love the goal that BC got, but then again, it was it was set up nicely by Nylander. I think most
Yeah.
guys would score that, but I think that with a guy like VC, I think it was really important that he got on the score sheet because he only scored 9 goals with Buffalo last year. The guy's been a little bit of an enigma throughout his career. He hasn't lived up to the hype when he was first signed as a free agent there at a college. And to me, this is a guy who might be maybe the wild card of all the pickups. I know you don't necessarily think that way, Jori, but I think that he might be a kind of guy he could be just confidence. Like if he gets his confidence, gets a few goals behind him,
Kind of like Tyson Berry last
yeah, he
year.
might get streaky. You just don't know. Like I mean, to me, I'm not saying he's the best pickup or he showed the best tonight, but he might be a guy that's a little bit of a wild card in how well they do. We didn't talk a lot about him, leading up to the season after they made all the pickups, but he might be a guy to watch out for.
Yeah, it's such a short season. I mean, one guy kind of gets hot, and you can do a lot with that in a 56 game sample. There's guys I think that are a lot more exciting that they picked up. One guy today, and I'm gonna take a little bit of a sharp left turn here. A new guy that I didn't like, and you can probably see where this is going. Is Zach Bogosian? Yeah, took 2 penalties.
Bad ones at that.
Yeah, I mean,
He's flat-footed, got to do something.
Yeah,
on the-
holding,
on the
tripping,
penalty kill. Even when he wasn't in the box, they scored one of their power play goals and he was late to his assignment.
Pinching way.
Did not like him. That 22 is cursed. I mean, you got
Zaitsev.
Zaitsev beforehand.
Yeah.
It's cursed.
Yeah, it probably is. I
The
think,
good right-handed defenseman.
Yeah.
the good quote unquote. You know what? The thing I really like about the new regime, again, I often bring Babcock's name back in, and maybe I'm living in the past a little bit too much, but the problem with Babcock is he's stuck with guys that, like we talked earlier about Hainsey being a top pairing defenseman when he wasn't. But a guy like Bogosian, the fact that he's a third pairing defenseman already, that he's kind of on the bubble. We really have 8 or 10 potential defensemen that we could use this year.
Yeah, you know who might be interesting. You might see later on is Sandin, who's hardly been talked about.
Yeah, he has been, but I think Lettinen will probably be given a look-see before Sandin. But the thing is that it's going to be an intense schedule. There are going to be a lot of back-to-backs, a lot of 3 and 4 nights. And especially defensemen log a lot of minutes. There's no question that you're going to see Sandin and Lettinen playing. And probably sooner because of the fact that Bogosian did not show up.
It was not impressive.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. We were consensus that it was just not a good performance. But I think we have a little bit of a hard on against the guy going into the thing. We weren't necessarily excited about what he was going to bring to them. We need toughness, a little bit. I get that, but he didn't necessarily show that. I don't think what he showed was flat-footedness and slowness and getting and having to take bad penalties because you're just not in the right spot.
Yeah. Well, toughness is something that the Leafs brought in. I mean, Ethan, you want to mention Wayne Simmons, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly what I want to say. So everyone was saying that he was kind of the spark plug to the little rally that the Leafs went on to end up winning in overtime. But
yeah, I mean...
You were saying that William Nylander was...
Oh, yeah, William Nylander's the guy that drives that. I don't think that the fight necessarily, changes the outcome. He's obviously... I mean, I actually thought he had a pretty good game. He seemed like he was engaged. He was throwing the body around. I mean, I'm never gonna say that it's a bad thing that he's throwing the body around, right? Like he did his job.
That's his game.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were face palming when he missed the open net, but the fact is he's not there to score all kinds of goals, right? And he's probably going to do that more than once this year, right? The fact is that we noticed on a couple of forechecks that he really got in, hit the defenseman hard. The Leafs need that. In order to gain control of pucks in the offensive zone, you're going to need guys like him and Zach Hyman that are not afraid to get in there and win puck battles. And we've talked about this over the last several years. Having another guy like a Zach Hyman, now, I'm not saying Wayne Simmons.
Joey Anderson's a guy, but he's not going to come in anytime soon.
He's going to be a while yet. They're going to groom him, and we're going to probably lose Hyman potentially in a year or two, so you're going to need a Joey Anderson. But in the meantime, I think Simmons brings in a good element in that it's not the fighting. I mean, the fighting, listen, I'm not a big fan of fighting, and I don't think any of us are, but we don't know the psyche of a hockey player. We've never played at that level. I'm willing to bet that guys, even though fighting isn't a big part of the game anymore, that guys do get amped up when they see a teammate fight, and especially when they're down by 2 goals. So I kind of feel like, I'm not saying that was the turning point, but I don't think it hurt the Leafs that he was willing to drop the gloves and kind of get this team kind of woken up, because they look pretty unengaged.
The first period they were pretty flat.
Well, you made the comment that they only had 9 shots.
Yeah, they were
with
getting
12 minutes left in the second.
Now that's not to discount the Habs. The Habs are a good team. I mean, the Joey Anderson surprised me. I'm not a big believer in him in that contract. I don't really know how that's going to look.
$5 million?
Oh Lord, it's like 7 years. It's
How much are they giving him?
I don't know, but they scored it's like 5.5. But he scored 1 goal last year. Like
Josh Anderson?
Yeah,
Josh, not Joey Anderson. Josh Anderson.
Yeah.
But he impressed me. And the Habs are a good team. I mean, even last year, the underlying numbers were really good. They couldn't get a save. Price had a 9.
Yeah, medium.
Like a lower save percentage. Yeah. And he played the bulk of the games because that's what he does.
They didn't have a backup.
Yeah, and now they've brought in Josh Allen, and obviously the goal for them is for him
Jake Allen.
Yeah. Who did I say?
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen. Goodness gracious. You know what? It was such an exciting game.
Yeah, it's thrown me off.
I am buzzed. I am just fired up from that game. We talked a lot about the guys that are new. We talked about Bogosian, Simmons. Let's.
What about Thornton? We were going to talk about Thornton.
Oh, sure. Let's go for Thornton. What do you think of his?
So Jumbo, you know what? I mean, listen. I think you're going to have to give the guy a game or two to get his. To kind of get used to playing with these guys and get his feet wet. But, I mean, if tonight's any indication, he kind of seemed to step behind on a few plays. I think he has the right kind of approach. He's trying very hard to get to pucks and make things happen. You can see him trying to create things, but he just seemed to be sort of late to the party on a lot of plays where they were trying to create stuff and he just wasn't fast enough to get to the play. That was the observation I made. I don't know what you guys want to.
I 100% agree. Like, Joe Thornton's like the leading assist scorer in the NHL, like currently. Like there's nothing like against his playmaking ability, but the thing is, when you put him alongside 2 speedsters and elite ones at that, with Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just I feel like there's a better option next to those 2 guys, as it doesn't necessarily bring the 2 of their games down. It just doesn't rise their performance as much as it could.
So here's the thing. There's this kind of important principle, I guess, in hockey, whatever, quality of teammate, right? So there's this notion that it's the quality of competition that impacts your play, but your quality of teammate is far more likely to impact how good you are. So, for example, TJ Brody played a lot with Mark Giordano last year, and his numbers were really good when he was with Giordano, and then away from him, his numbers dropped, and his quality of competition was pretty stagnant as far as I understand, but he went from playing with Mark Giordano to Michael Stone, so obviously his numbers fell, they weren't as good. So the idea, probably, I mean, if you were to fill in the gaps, is that if you put Joe Thornton next to, Ilya Mikheyev and Zach Hyman,
He brings their game up.
it's an effect. Well, it's not so much that maybe it's an effective line, but you're more likely to have Matthews and Marner bring Thornton's game up, whereas if you're having him play with some third line guys, he's not gonna put up numbers, whereas with the best guys, they ideally can drag him along. That being said, tonight, not the best indication of things to come, I would say. He didn't super impress me. That line, I mean, Austin Matthews had a hell of a game. He hit the post there.
He had like 14 shot attempts or something crazy. Like
he was flying. He was a little snake bitten. His streak ended tonight, right? But the first game of the year streak. But you know what? I mean, like I said to you after the game, he's not going to carry them every night. I think it's great that Tavares and Nylander had big games tonight, because you're going up against a team that the Leafs should. I mean, it's an improved Ottawa team, granted, but the Leafs should still be able to handle them pretty easily. And I think Matthews notoriously plays well against them and should probably bring his game up. And he's on the same line as Marner, so you'd imagine those two will probably, at least one of those two games, I would anticipate they'll have a really big game. I don't know which one, but that's just my thought about them. But Joe Thornton, to me, not a good fit with that first line. But I think that Sheldon Keefe will eventually realize that and will maybe put him on, I don't know. I'm not even sure if he's a second line guy. I think he would go down to the third line, because you got Tavares centering the second line. I don't know. I mean, do you have Thornton centering, or do you have him on the wing?
You probably have him centering. I mean, he's good enough to center, and then you maybe move Kerfoot to the wing with Tavares and Nylander, which he played briefly last year.
Hold on,
really well.
and move VC where?
I think you put VC on the third line, or I mean, if he obviously scored tonight, but before his goal, he was kind of doing.
Yeah, he wasn't really.
Yeah, he was here and there. I mean, Nick Robertson sitting on your taxi squad.
Oh, yeah.
That's an attractive
I
name.
mean, we're salivating at the prospect. I love young guys, and I think the future of this team looks pretty good with some of the young guys. But to me, Robertson is an obvious one that's going to be probably a staple on this team until free agency. And to me, I don't know how much more seasoning the kid needs. But you, Jori and Ethan, you know him better than I do. But to me, I think it's probably. I mean, he'll probably slot in place of Barabanov or someone in the fourth line, or Simmons. I can't see that he'd be sitting like game after game after game. They're going to have to give him a chance.
Yeah, like you said, it's like a back-to-back, bunch of back-to-backs, jam-packed schedule.
Yeah, they'll use that time.
He should get in a couple games. You never know how many, but.
I hope so. I think he can have an impact.
Yeah, I don't have the minutes in front of me, obviously. But I do recall seeing on Twitter Barabanov was on pace, and I think I mentioned it to you guys. He's on pace for 5 minutes after 2 periods. He didn't play. He played a little bit in the third. I think he had a nice block shot there at the end. He had a big block. But he didn't play very much. And, I mean, listen, he was successful in the KHL. There's a lot of reason to believe he'll be successful in the NHL.
Do you think they were just managing his minutes?
Well,
he's just getting going. Or?
It could be that. I think it's more that they're gonna try to roll their top lines. They're gonna play their top guys a lot.
Yeah.
That was something that Babcock didn't do enough, and we keep bringing up Babcock. It's been 18 months. What is it? 12 months since he coached the game for the Leafs.
Yeah.
But the thing that he did is he really liked to roll the 4 lines. You saw Austin playing 17, 18 minutes a night, right? There was a whole big controversy.
Right.
Keefe is not going to do that. It's never been his plan. So I kind of as a consequence, your fourth line is going to play 5-6 minutes a night, which in most cases is totally fine. How much of an impact can your fourth line
That's a
make as
great
opposed
question.
to.
But that's a great question because to me, I wouldn't mind seeing them get a little bit more ice time, but again, at whose expense?
Yeah, and you don't want to make it well, what, you want to do the fourth line at the third line's expense, but then you're flipping the lines. Like,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of reason to, especially if you're the Leafs.
I look at their third and fourth lines, and with the exception of maybe like Kerfoot and this is my opinion, but with the exception of Kerfoot and Hyman, maybe Mikheyev, but I don't even know. I think most of the third and fourth liners on the Leafs are a little bit interchangeable. That's just my feeling.
I don't know.
You might not agree with that.
I don't know if I agree with that.
I don't think at this point in like Simmons' career he can play on like a
Third
third
line minutes,
line.
no?
Yeah.
And what about Spezza? Same?
Spezza's, I don't know. He's projected to be a lot worse this year.
Yeah.
He's probably going to retire after this year.
You think so?
I think so. But he's definitely a very solid, old and experienced fourth
He'd
liner.
be good on that second
but-
power play unit, like steady. He's very, very. I think he'd be a good performer on.
He was there. He took a couple draws. I mean, obviously they didn't produce anything. Was
Speaking
the
of draws,
Oh,
I was just gonna say, sorry to interrupt, but you notice tonight, and it's not. We don't often talk a lot about it, but it's one of the things that can make or break games, and it was really hurting the Leafs early on. Was losing a lot of faceoffs.
I couldn't disagree more. The face-off, the game is so like free-flowing that face-offs, in the grand scheme of things, don't make enough of a difference. They lost a couple key draws. The only situation that they're really important is in like the D zone, especially when you're shorthanded. Which I think they lost a couple, and I think that's how Josh Anderson.
Yes.
That's how Josh
Yeah.
Anderson scored his goal.
I was
So that's when it
gonna
matters.
mention
But
Yeah.
in
and
like
they lost 2 in a row on that.
yeah, but otherwise, to me, it's not really worth getting hung up too much over the face-offs. Matthews PK, didn't he won a draw or two, didn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't noticeable out there. I think they might have scored even while he was on the PK.
That's a new twist.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it's
I don't
whatever.
mind it.
I'm of the opinion that PKs are more system than personnel. If you have a good PK system that is aggressive and protects the slot, then in theory you could put whoever out there and be fine. You know what's something that's interesting is like it's the 4 forward thing has spread to the power plays and rightfully so, because the forwards are going to be better at scoring than
Defense.
yeah. So
Yeah.
why hasn't a similar thing happened on PKs where you get 3 defensemen out there and the centerman take the draw? You know, like if these defensemen are theoretically better
at defending.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it is a
It's
good
a
point.
very good point. Again,
Depends who you
I've
got. If
never
you got
been-
like Mo or
I've
something.
never been on the inside of talking to coaches to understand their way of thinking on that. Forechecking is more of an offensive skill, right? Like a forward, defensemen don't really forecheck. So and forechecking in a sense is part of the PK, getting in a guy's face and that kind of thing. So it's possible that they look at forwards as being maybe a little bit better at that. Defensemen are good with their stick, but forwards are maybe a little bit better at
Better in
getting
their
the body
face,
or getting in. Yeah, so that's my theory. But I want to get back to one subject that we touched upon very early, but we didn't delve very much into it. And I think it might. There's so many things you can talk about with the Leafs, but this could be the key. And it's Freddie Anderson.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I'm worried. I'm worried about Frederick Anderson. Even in overtime, I didn't love that breakaway.
He kind of just went down.
Yeah,
like,
he just
praying.
He went down, did the splits, and to be honest, it was Drouin or who was
No,
it?
it was
Deno. He didn't handle the puck properly. He faked himself out basically on that one, right? I mean, anyone who had proper hands and saw the goalie bit hard would probably have put it over him because he was basically, like a what do you call it?
Spread eagle.
Spread eagle and
Yeah.
snow angel kind of deal. But I don't know. Like there were a lot of things tonight where Freddie just didn't look comfortable, and I know you guys didn't make a big deal of it the other night in the blue and white game, and I know it's just an inter-squad game, but I really thought Jack Campbell looked good, and I know Ethan, you were
Partially agreeing with you.
You partially agree, but
It's
you
kind of small
partially
sample
said,
size because
and
he
you
didn't have that
also
much
said
opportunity
you-
last year.
yeah, and you said you didn't like his style. You didn't think he was as. I
Smooth.
thought actually he did look good. I thought he looked super confident, and I thought Freddie tonight did not look that confident at times.
Yeah, Freddie.
October Freddie.
That's the thing. Yeah, Freddie doesn't really start years well. He historically hasn't.
Is this a nerves thing? What do you think it is?
I don't think it's anything. I think it's that it's like a.
It's also a weird year.
No, but also part of it is just that you remember him having poor starts. Like last year or 2 years ago, he started out actually fine in October, and I think he sputtered a little bit around like January. It's like 4 seasons, right? It's 4 seasons of the guy's career. I mean, obviously, if there's a pattern, like people like to draw conclusions, but I wouldn't draw too many. You're gonna see Campbell over the weekend on Friday or Saturday. I would assume you'll probably see him on Friday because they're probably gonna want Anderson in net for the second half of the back-to-back. Mind you, the other team's also in the second half, and it's also the Ottawa Senators. So
who's in net for Ottawa these days? Anderson's.
No, they picked up Murray over the offseason.
Oh, Matt Murray.
Yeah, they picked up Murray over the offseason.
They're a better team than they were last year, but they're no dynasty.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
not by a long shot.
We'll get to that. I'm excited to see Tim Stützle for them on Friday, but we'll obviously get to them when we get there. For now, we
have 9 more games against the Habs, right? 8 more or 9 more?
9 more.
It's
10 altogether.
It's 10 against the Habs, 10 against the Jets.
So
that
what do you think about this rivalry in general, guys? I mean,
this is going to be the most competitive one in my opinion.
Yeah, back and forth seesaw.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm a little worried about the Habs.
Yeah, the Habs are a good team, like I said, but like the Leafs should listen. I mean, obviously you'd like them to win it by a bigger margin, but in theory they should run over the division. Now that being said, this was by all accounts not the best game, particularly at 5-on-5. They got outchanced. They got outpossessed. The Leafs probably didn't deserve to necessarily win this game. Part of that is on Frederik Andersen, just kind of not having
and the
his
PK
best
was
stuff.
not good tonight.
Yeah, no, that too. The PK, I mean, had its moments of kind of.
But the power play picked them up.
Exactly, but that's how it's always going to be with the Leafs. I mean, a big thing with the Lightning last year was that they were so lethal on both. So as much as special teams is not something you want to build your team around because
it's important.
Yeah, 80% of the game is played at 5-on-5, but that 20% is normally what separates the good teams from the bad teams.
Yeah.
There's a lot of year to year that stuff is kind of fluctuates pretty heavily.
Well, you mentioned last year, and this is something that we noticed tonight early on. Anyway, the Leafs don't get a lot of power play.
Yeah,
the refs are really.
Yeah.
I don't want to sound like a homer, but they were down three PKs and no power plays at one point in the game.
Yeah, last year. I mean, basically throughout Kyle Dubas's time as GM, that's been the prevailing kind of theme is that they can't get power plays. Now there is a extraordinarily strong correlation between taking penalties and drawing penalties because the refs are just kind of we want to call an even game, even though that inherently makes it uneven. Anyways, by having guys like Simmons and Bogosian in the lineup, which is maybe why they are gonna leave them in, is that they will get the Leafs, even though they will take penalties, they will in the net also increase the number of power plays the Leafs have. So maybe a devil's advocate for another thing. It's an interesting way of looking at it.
So you're saying by getting more penalties, they'll probably get some calls going the other way.
Yeah, and their power play is going to be good this year. I mean, there's not a lot of
if
they stack, it'll be really good. Even if it's split, I think they'll still have an above average power play. But I mean, regardless, their power play should be good.
So we got to wrap it up. So what do you conclude? What do you take from this game tonight, guys?
I don't know. It's early, first game obviously. Freddie, October Freddie, quote unquote, but I think they should test out Campbell. Even not half the games because he's your backup, but maybe a good 1/3 of the games because especially with Freddie, his contract's ending. I don't know if it's this year or next year, but you're gonna run with Jack Campbell in the near future, so you gotta get him ready.
And you gotta rest Freddie for the playoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, which they haven't
Assuming
done.
he's the number one.
And what about yourself, Jori? What do you take from the game?
Yeah, I don't know if a Jack Campbell emergency button after one game is necessary. Keep an eye on Freddie. That's probably the biggest storyline in a negative light. From a more kind of positive perspective, I mean, the storyline is Nylander. I think it kind of starts and ends with him. Just how good he was today. And hopefully that's something he can do. I mean, 70 points is really good last year. He was at a 70-ish point pace, 30-something odd goals. And there's no reason to believe that this crazy 3 points is something that's going to be regular. But if he can, find another gear and enter that Matthews and Marner echelon, then you're sitting pretty.
I think that's exactly what...
I think he has the potential to.
No,
he's always had the potential, but that's been the knock on him, is that he'll, show up for a bunch of games and play like he played tonight, and then he'll be invisible. And it's been the knock on Marner a lot too, and sometimes Matthews, but generally Nylander for some reason tends to get more criticism, and it's also because his game's a little bit different. He tends to be a little more round and round with his skating, and people look at that and say he's a bit of a floater. I think, you know what? I think that tonight was about getting the rust out. To be honest with you, I didn't think they played all that great a game outside of their special team, not their special teams, but their power play. I didn't think Freddie looked that good. I didn't think Matthews, he had lots of chances, but I didn't necessarily think he was in necessarily fifth gear tonight. I think they have another gear to take it to, and I think they're going to get even better than tonight. So I'm optimistic. I'm trying to look at the positives, and hopefully Bogosian will be glued to the bench and
Or the press box.
yeah, that's what I meant. Or glued to the press box. And I want to see Sandin and Lettinen. I really do want to see those guys and see what they have.
Yeah. You know what the biggest takeaway from tonight is?
What?
Hockey's back, baby.
Yes, baby.
Hockey's back.
Go Leafs, go. All right. Thanks for thanks for coming and listening to us.
That'll be all for this one, and we'll see you Friday night after the Leafs play the Ottawa Senators in Ottawa.
The Maple